Hi guys, welcome back to DeepShift Labs. In this video, we're going to be explaining the differences between PyTorch and TensorFlow. So what will you learn in this video? You'll learn what is TensorFlow and PyTorch. You'll learn some of the key differences, where to start your AI hobby, the features for both of these tools, as well as our personal preference at DeepShift Labs. A quick disclaimer, we do not endorse or partner with any tools or products mentioned in this video. This video is strictly educational. So what are they? What is PyTorch and TensorFlow? They're basically a framework for your machine learning and AI tasks. And if you're not familiar with AI, please check out our video on basics into AI. It's going to be a great starter and will help you better understand all the terms mentioned in this video. TensorFlow and PyTorch also provide a basic interface for you to do complex functions like convolutions and linear operations. They're good for entry-level and hobby-level work, as well as enterprise-level stuff. So if you are just beginning AI and want to make some basic models like cats versus dogs or classifying fruits or something of your choice, they're great for that. And for large enterprises like Amazon and Apple, which want to use heavy and powerful machine learning models to make their users' lives easier. They also provide data processing, visualization, and training tools. This allows you to not only just train AI models, but also see what's going on, not only with the model itself, but also with the data. PyTorch and TensorFlow both have image processing libraries, text vectorization libraries, and all these different features that would be incredibly useful to a data scientist and machine learning expert, as well as us beginners. They have documentation on how to learn AI, and not just the framework itself. So if you want to learn AI, you don't have to learn AI separately and then come back and learn these frameworks. Both of the documentations provided by TensorFlow and PyTorch help you learn AI as you go. So you don't have to be spending too much time on tutorial videos and other documentations. It's all in one place. And lastly, but most importantly, they're open source and community-driven frameworks, making it very easy for you to make your own additions to these frameworks. So let's look at some key differences. Number one, let's look at TensorFlow over here on the left. TensorFlow is an extremely powerful and featureful library. It's maintained by Google. This means that it's going to have support for a very long time. In fact, Google uses them for a lot of their tasks too. It uses the Keras API, which makes it really easy to train AI models and prototype. Keras API is another layer on top of TensorFlow. It allows you to make simple image recognition models with only 18 lines of code. That is impressive. It is a go-to tool for many researchers and universities around the globe. It also has good documentation, so does PyTorch though, and it allows you to learn AI as well as the framework all at the same time. One major advantage that TensorFlow has is a tool called TensorBoard. TensorBoard is an AI visualization tool. It allows you to see the losses and the accuracies as the AI model trains. And this allows you, as the AI researcher, to quickly figure out whether your model is going to converge or whether it's diverging, so you can make the appropriate changes to your system. It supports distributed training, which means if you have multiple CPUs or multiple GPUs, you can equally distribute the training load to make it quicker and easier to train. And lastly, you can deploy AI models quickly using TF-Serve. TF-Serve is another addition to TensorFlow that makes it incredibly easy to deploy your models onto your website or application as soon as you train them. In fact, TensorFlow has a JavaScript version that you can use to quickly launch your models on the web browser as soon as you have the trained model. The one downside to TensorFlow is that it has an extremely steep learning curve. Although the Keras API makes it incredibly easy to learn, if you want to use some of the more powerful and more complex functions like custom training procedures and custom loss functions, it is incredibly difficult to learn for beginners. Now, PyTorch, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. it's very easy to learn PyTorch. It has a very low learning curve, and it has, again, very good documentation to ease your learning. On top of that, PyTorch supports default Python debugging tools like PyCharm's debugger, PDB, etc. Whereas on TensorFlow, you'd have to use an external tool to debug your programs. On top of that, PyTorch has more open code. What we mean by open code is, although you have to use several more lines of code to make the same functionality that you would normally do in like 18 lines of code in TensorFlow, you'd have to write maybe 30 lines of code in PyTorch. Well, open code means that all the classes and the training procedure, everything is open and custom designed by you. So in the case that something does go wrong, it's very easy for you to see the entire procedure and all the steps that PyTorch is following. Not to say that this makes it more difficult than TensorFlow. It is equally easy to learn. It's a different style of coding. And as I said before, they both have incredibly good documentation. So no matter which tool you pick in the end, it's going to be a very easy job. It's going to be a very enjoyable journey to learn because of their amazing documentation. Now, where should you start to learn, whether you want to learn PyTorch or TensorFlow? Documentation. I know many people try to use YouTube videos or professional courses, and while they help teach you the basic fundamentals of artificial intelligence and machine learning, the ultimate way to quickly get a grasp on whatever topic you are trying to learn, whether that's natural language processing or image classification or anything of those sorts, documentation is your way to go. It's a more direct and more focused approach to learning. Now, YouTube series like the ones we make at Deep Shift Labs are also a great way to learn fundamental concepts of artificial intelligence to give you a more robust understanding on what your AI model is doing. But by far the most important thing that everyone should use when learning AI is practical examples. If you just read through the documentation, it's not going to do you much good. But if you pick a problem, for example, cats versus dogs, it was the first model I've ever trained, and it was a very good way for me to learn AI. It was a very easy problem. There were tons of data sets available. The data was usually provided in a very clean manner, and there was not much data processing required, and it was difficult at first to make a cats versus dogs model that would perform well, but in the end, I learned so many things from just that one practical example. So as you read the documentation, I would definitely recommend to try a practical example alongside. It really helps and boosts your understanding. So, before I talk about my preference, I think we should quickly go over the features of both of these products. I believe that PyTorch and TensorFlow have an equal and amazing feature. Because of the community support that they're getting in this modern generation, they're going to have an increased demand in the enterprise level as well as the hobby level in the future. PyTorch is actively being used by universities and researchers and hobbyists to make their AI models function. In fact, there are so many implementations of popular algorithms like BERT and YOLO and other ones out there. TensorFlow, on the other hand, is maintained by Google. In fact, Google uses TensorFlow quite a bit in their own software as well, which ensures its survival in the future market. So no matter which tool you pick, you definitely don't need to worry about it disappearing someday or deprecating itself, because that's definitely not going to happen. Now, our preference at Deep Shift Labs. All of our artificial intelligence, including the Magist algorithm and Project Zeta, are being developed in TensorFlow. The reason is partly because it is powerful, has good documentation, community support, and it's very easy for us to prototype in. But another major reason why we use TensorFlow is simply because that's the one we decided to learn first. All of our AI researchers at Deep Shift Labs, including me, we started with TensorFlow and had a good basis of understanding in TensorFlow. So while PyTorch would have been very beneficial to some parts of our projects, it was simply too difficult to learn another framework all over again, and so that's why we use TensorFlow. So our final verdict from DeepShift Labs is that no matter what framework you pick, it's important that you stick to that framework. Because for example, if we shifted to PyTorch, it would have took us much longer to prototype. And the end goal with all projects is to quickly get prototypes and designs out there. So, if you're looking for a robust and enterprise software that can be used at the enterprise level, maybe you're making a project and you want to convert it to a professional business application later, TensorFlow would probably be your best bet. But if you're just a hobbyist wanting to um, try out artificial intelligence, see what you can learn from it, and you want it to be a seamless experience, PyTorch would definitely be the way to go. PyTorch has a lot of YouTube videos on how to use it, and is still extremely powerful regarding all types of AI fields. So no matter what tool you pick, just remember, AI always has your side. Thank you.